Okay, good evening, all. My name is Arlene J. Ramsey. As you know, it is now 7:15. We're on the Grown Folk Talking podcast, and we're here on my show called Everyone Let's Talk with the powerful and lovely Dequi. Before we get into the conversation, I have to let you all know that Dequi is an avid listener of the Grown Folk Talking podcast, and we've got acquainted from the Carmelo Anthony podcast. And lo and behold, I have come to learn so much about this sister and so much powerful work that you've been doing with being an advocate of political prisoners. Earlier, when I called you today, you were on a prison call. I want to say that that's with someone that you are actually advocating for. And we're looking for, we're going to get into this conversation. So without further ado, why don't you all meet Dequi? Dequi, I'm happy to have you on. Let us know a bit about yourself and what you've done over the years.
Well, thank you so much, Sister Arlene, for having me, for inviting me, and thank you to the folks that are in your listening audience. I am a Brooklyn-born indigenous, new African indigenous woman. My family is both Cherokee and Shinnecock. Africa, I don't know from where because of enslavement, but I identify as new African. I am a retired educator in the the New York City Department of Miseducation, and I always say that pointedly and deliberately, miseducation, because I know how much they are miseducating and undereducating black and brown children in the school system. I have been working with and on behalf of U.S.-held political prisoners and prisoners of war, particularly those members of the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army, for more than 30 years. That's who I was talking to on the phone, one of our political prisoners who is in Angola. Angola prison is in Louisiana, and before it became a prison, it was a plantation. And many of the people that are the prison guards are the descendants of the slave owners that ran the Angola prison. So it's run very much in the same way that the plantation, because it's a huge, huge plot of land. And it was a slave plantation. Now it's a prison plantation. So what else can I say? I co-hosted a radio program, a public affairs radio program on listener-sponsored the Pacifica network here in New York. It's 99.5. I did that with my co-host and friend Sally O'Brien, who is now an ancestor. But it was a public affairs show that gave voice to our political prisoners, the families, and the survivors of police terror and murder, repressive legislation, and what's happening in Puerto Rico. So I don't know what else I've done. I've been published. I've co-edited a book. I've written essays and contributed to anthologies. So I've lived a life, or I should say I'm living a life, because I'm still here. So let me correct that. Sadly, I am learning to live without the love of my life. My husband, Sekou Odinga, who was a member of the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army, and a former political prisoner of war for 33 years. He passed away on January 12, 2024. So I've been on a healing journey since January, well, actually since March 2024. So my husband did time he was convicted for the liberation. Most people know of Assata Shakur, but they don't know of the people who are her comrades who she struggled with, and he was convicted for her liberation. So he did time in the federal system for liberating her.
Wow. What interesting background. I can see why you don't, you have so much that you have done, and we're saying we can be here for a very long time for each section or sector of work that you have done. I heard you mention Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
Can you expound or elaborate more on what work that you have done with Puerto Rico?
Well, the same. It's Puerto Rico has been taken over and is a colony of the United States, and so they have been fighting colonization, settler colonization. They've been fighting gentrification. They've been fighting land theft and fighting for independence for over a century, and so our show was focused on where we live, was focused on dealing with that and giving voice to that struggle, because people don't, there's so much that the corporate media does not talk about and does not highlight. That's why shows like what you're doing, and this network is so very important, because it brings the news and it brings the people to the people, because corporate media will not bring us to the people, because they're interested in silencing us and marginalizing us and rendering us invisible and doing what they do with their oppressive, repressive policies that are for rich people. So we focused on Puerto Rico to give voice to the struggle for independence, to end, people, developers coming in there and taking over beach areas and making it so that the people who live there can't go to the beach. And that's not just happening in Puerto Rico. That is happening all over the world. In the Caribbean, black folks. I went to Barbados a number of years ago, and we met people who said they couldn't sit on that part of the beach because that was the hotel. So that kind of stuff is happening. And so that's what we did with Puerto Rico, to highlight that. And we had some Puerto Rican freedom fighters who were in prison as political prisoners as well.
That is interesting. I did hear something of similar happening in Jamaica.
Yes.
And I do believe that some of the residents burned down a hotel. So kudos to Jamaica, because, who are they to tell the people that they cannot swim on the waters just because they have a hotel for their rich people or, visitors to come to. So, yeah, I understand the importance of that work. Thank you so much for doing that work. I want to go back some, because you mentioned your significant other passed away in 2024. So that was just 2 years ago. So
yeah.
you're still grieving, and grief is it's layered, and will forever be changed. So you're not going to go back to who you used to be before 2024. It's a matter of learning how to live with the grief and the changes that you go through with grief, right? But you did say your significant other served time for liberating. It's like he took Assata Shakur's place. So she, of course, got liberated, but he spent the time in jail because of that, is what you're saying?
Yeah, well, Assata was liberated on November 2nd, 1979. Sekou was a member of the Black Panther Party, as I said, and he was in Algeria because he was also a member of the Panther 21, which was an infamous case here in New York City, where the FBI and the police went to destroy and crush the New York City chapter and the leadership of the Black Panther Party. And so they arrested like over 24 people and charged them with, they was facing hundreds of years in prison, charged with conspiracy to blow up flowers, like the botanical gardens, to blow up department stores at Easter time. Now, black folks shop, back then in 1969, right? Black folks celebrated Easter, and everybody took their kids shopping for Easter clothes. So why would black people fighting for freedom want to blow up department stores where black people are shopping? But that's just part of the layers, distortions, and the criminalization of resistance. And so when they went to go get Sekou, he escaped. And when he escaped, he was sent to Algeria to help set up the international section of the Black Panther Party. He established in New York City, the Harlem Bronx chapter, with some other folks, Bilal Sunni Ali, who was a saxophone player with Gil Scott-Heron, But they established the Harlem Bronx chapter, and then so he went to Algeria, and he stayed there for a number of years until the U.S. was putting pressure on the Algerian government to send the revolutionaries the black revolutionaries that were there, because the Black Panther Party had been given a embassy to work out of. And so he came back to the United States in the mid 70s, and he was existing and struggling underground. And as an underground means that people don't know who you are. You give an assumed name. You're wanted. He was wanted by the police, but they planned and strategized to liberate Asada. And so on November 2nd, 1979, as I said, they went into the prison and took her out. And so he went in along with Dr. Mutulu Shakur, who was also now an ancestor, and they liberated her. And they gave her safety and protection and cover until she was able to get asylum in Cuba. And so we thank Fidel Castro and the Cuban people and the nation of Cuba for giving protection and cover and exile to our criminalized freedom fighters, because this country has criminalized black resistance from Nat Turner to Harriet Tubman, right? Harriet Tubman had a reward on her head, just like Asada. We call it, I've often said Asada is our modern day, our 21st century Harriet Tubman. And so they've criminalized resistance, but people want to be free, and people fight for that. And so, yeah, he was charged with her liberation. Mutulu Shakur and some other folks were charged and convicted with her liberation once they were captured, and they did decades in prison.
Unbelievable. Did you meet Sekou? What does Sekou has any relation to Tupac Shakur?
Yeah, he's like an uncle.
Related. Right, okay, right, because I heard of him and I know of the story. Now, I did, of course, just meeting you, didn't know that you were his wife, but I heard of him. So, were you married to him prior to him serving this time?
No.
In prison?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, people heard of Sekou because Tupac rapped about them. Tupac
of course.
had Mutulu and Geronimo and Bilal, Sunni Ali and Jamal Joseph. He was raised by his mother was a Panther. So you know how black folks are extended family and kinship. So people who are not blood related become your kin. They become your aunties and your uncles and your cousins. So yeah.
Right.
So Tupac was Sekou's nephew in that regard, because he and Afeni were close.
Right. Okay.
Sisters and brothers and comrades. Afeni was also one of the 21.
Right. Okay. And so now he did get released from prison though, right? Or
yes, in 2014, November 25th. 2014. And let me just backtrack to say that Yaki Gaddafi, who was part of the Outlaws with Tupac, that's Sekou's.
Yeah.
He was killed.
That's Sekou's
son.
Who is he? Oh, that was his. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Now I know that they were Tupac's boys, right?
Yeah.
Weren't they from Jersey? They were from Newark. Or no?
Yeah, well, they lived there. They lived. Yaki lived in New Jersey. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So he
in New York, but then people move. We move around. But he ended up living in New York, in Newark, New Jersey.
Newark, right? Because wow. So how did he adjust? How did your husband adjust after spending decades in prison, right? And then he only lived 10 years before he passed, right? If he was released in 2024. I think one of the things that we have gone through so much, our ancestors and those that are in the fight, it is layers that is connected to this fight, right? It is not just the strong arm and power to the people. It is also the depression, the anxiety, how we're holding each other up behind closed doors. We're strong and powerful on camera and up front. We have to be. But families have been, dealing with the pressure, right? And even those family members that are not on the ground, boots on the ground per se, but because they're related, their family proximity to it has affected them as well. And you don't live happy lives, right? Free lives. Although we're fighting for freedom, we know freedom isn't free, but you don't live a free life or a life to just say, I just want to be. It's, you wake up with the fight on your mind. This is what you're talking about at dinner. This is what you're strategizing, and this is what the family is a part of. How do you maintain some peace, some downtime, let's say catch a movie? Do you do any of that, or are you just focused on
dogmatic? No, I am not dogmatic. No, we like to have revolutionaries like to have fun. Revolutionaries like to eat. The revolutionaries like to dance. Sekou and I would watch movies. We didn't go to the movies a lot, but with TV, all these apps we had like Netflix and stuff like that, we watch movies. And then the movement people become our family. And so, yeah, you're right. Families and people suffer because, like you said, we say freedom ain't free. One of our political prisoners, who's now an ancestor, Abdul Majid, used to always say that freedom ain't free, and it don't come cheap. So definitely, right. Our captured freedom fighters who have been political prisoners for decades, those who have come home, those who are still behind the wall, and those who were killed behind the wall because of medical neglect. If we think it's hard for black folks and cash poor and working class people to get health coverage on the outside, you can, quadruple 100 times that in prison, because the people who are practicing on our loved ones in prison are doctors that lost their license through malpractice, who cannot practice on the street, but they can go and practice on people in prison. So you can imagine the lack of decent, adequate health care, right, that people in prison get, because we don't get it out here. And so, yeah, we have fun. I'm thankful. I'm glad that you said that, what you said, because when say about learning to live, because when I first, like you said, I will never have that life back. And one day I had to tell myself that, because I was, for the longest time, I kept saying, I want my life back. Like right after Sekou passed, I'm like, I want my life back. I would say goodnight to him at night, and I would say, baby, I can't believe you're not here. And then one day I said, I have to stop saying that, because I have to believe that he's not here, because he's not here. And I have to learn to live, because I'm not ready to join him. I am still amongst the living. And so I do have to learn, to live a life of joy and work and resistance and all of those things, even without him by my side in the physical sense. And it's taken a while. I'm slowly getting back into the work, because I've traveled. People all over the country and in different parts of the world over these last 2 years, have invited me to come and stay with them, just so I could have a respite, because it's been really hard for me to be in our home without him. Like this, right. I always tell people, the silence of Sekou not being here is deafening. Right? When you live right. with somebody, like just the everyday existence. And so people have invited me, and I've taken them up on that offer. So I've been traveling for the last since March of 2024. And right now I'm sick of airplanes, right? But I've been fortunate, and I've been blessed that we have a community of people in other parts of the world and of the country that make up our kinship and make up our family, from people who struggle and people who do this work. So I've been blessed to be able to be cared for and taken care of by other people.
I'm happy. I'm happy for you, and it's good to know that you all have a great and strong support network. That's something I do know. Many of us do know, who know a little bit about the movement. There was something I wanted to ask you that just slipped my mind. Right, this is what I wanted to ask. With what are some things that you have to know off the top of your head? Like what I'm envisioning is because you're part of the movement, you need to, things we take for granted, like the law, right? And I envision or assume that you have to know some things off top of your head so you could shoot from the hip because you're in the trenches. Is that something that goes on or happens with the with Black Panther Party and freedom fighters as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think that one of the most important things that Black folks, brown folks, and indigenous folks have to know is we have a right to resist. We have a right to fight for our freedom. We have a right to freedom. We have a right to dignity and human rights. That's what Malcolm was talking about, human rights. He was no civil rights leader. He was about human rights and land and independence. And so there are definitely things we have to know, especially, the way that TV, Malcolm used to say it, right? He said that the media is the most powerful weapon because it can make you hate your friends and love your enemies. And so they present police as friendly, the good cop, the bad cop, right? So people get picked up, and it's the one police officer that's getting ready to brutalize the person, and then you have the other one that's so-called stopping them from brutalizing people. So they play that off of each other to play mind games with people to get them to talk. And so if there's anything that I would want people who don't know, do not talk to the police. You give your name, and that's it. And they pick you up for anything. They show you a picture. They ask you if you know this person, if you've been to this place. You want a lawyer. A movement lawyer of ours said to me one time, he said, people think they know, and we tell them that all the time, but people are always talking to the police, and what they're doing is seeking information that then they can use against you. So people have an attorney, and so people have to say, I'm giving you my name. Am I being detained? Don't answer any kind of questions. Don't say yes. Don't say no. Say I want a lawyer. Because once you start answering, you go down the rabbit hole, and then it weaves a tail that they can spin and catch you up. And people make that mistake all the time because they look at TV and they see something that teaches them that, no, the police are not, it's one bad apple. No, it's a system that is designed to demonize, criminalize, and put us in prison. It's like Frederick Douglass said he wondered what the new form of slavery was going to be when so-called chattel slavery, the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. It was prison. So they just refashion stuff, and we got to be smarter to understand that. And so we have to educate. That's why, again, your show and shows like this become important, because these are not things that our children are learning in school. I know because I was there.
Right. You did say when we spoke, not yesterday, the day before, that there are so many political prisoners that we don't know of, right? And so a name comes to mind, Mumia, right? Mumia was a part of the MOVE movement out there in Philadelphia, from what I remember. And I can't remember how long he's been in there. And as we discussed, you are also involved with trying to get him out. You guys have accomplished, because he was on death row, right? Yes. And so you all have accomplished from them moving him from death row to life in prison. And so you're still doing the work to try to see if we can get him out of prison, correct?
Right. Yeah. Well, let me just make a correction. Mumia was not part of MOVE. He was part of the Black Panther Party, and he was in the Black Panther Party as a journalist working on the Black Panther newspaper when he was 16 years old, right? And then he was framed and convicted of the murder of a police officer, despite evidence that he was not the shooter, because the person that, a report was made, that a statement was made at the night of, that the person who shot the police officer ran away. Well, Mumia didn't run because he was shot and wounded and taken to the hospital. But I want to say that Mumia is still, like, one of the things that the prisons are death camps. So while they a death warrant away, like, because the difference between being on death row and being in prison, and on death row, you get an execution date. Right? So they hold that over you. You in the death camp, you just in prison with a life sentence, you can go at any time. But it means that they mean for you to still die in prison. And so we have to get people to understand that moving Mumia from death row to life imprisonment, he still is not free, and it's still death, because we have so many. I mentioned Abdul Majid, who our freedom fighter, who said freedom ain't free and it don't come cheap. He had was really a treatable thing. His gallbladder erupted. For months, he was telling the prison that he was in pain, excruciating pain. It's like if you have an appendix, right? If that busts, people die from their appendix bursting. Well, they kept giving him Advil or ibuprofen, and one morning, his gallbladder erupted, and he died, right? Robert Hayes, another one of our Black Panther political prisoners, he had diabetes, sugar levels going up and down in the high hundreds and low single digits on a regular basis. So it's just, Kamal Siddiqui, who is in Augusta so-called medical facility, medical prison, gets no medical treatment, right? He has ulcers on his legs, and he cleans the ulcers, right? And he's had serious health issues, and he's in prison because in 2002, the FBI came to visit him to say they wanted him to help them capture Assata, and he refused. And they told him, if you refuse, we're going to make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison. So they convicted him. They charged him and convicted him with a death of a police officer that had happened 30 years prior, that they didn't have evidence of that it was him, and they had to let him go.
Well, what would make them think that he had any information on where Assata was?
Because one, he was a member of the Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Army, just like her. They share a daughter. And so people like when Sekou was captured on October 23rd, 1981, he was beaten and tortured for more than 6 hours. He was beaten and tortured into a 3-month hospital stay. And what they were doing was torturing him and beating him, pulling out his toenails, putting cigars out on his legs, beating him in the stomach, like he had rupturing his spleen. They were trying to find Assata. So this is what they do. This is what they do. And this is, people often think, oh, if the police arrest you, you must have done something. When you Black in America, you're Black. That's enough. It don't matter especially for Black males. I mean, they're killing Black girls and Black women too, no doubt, right? But Black males, they can have on a suit and tie, and they're still suspect.
Right. Yeah. It's different on how they abuse the Black man versus the Black woman. With the Black man, it is almost always physical violence, because that's how you're going to break a man, right? Versus with a woman, we don't need physical violence to be broken. It's really tactics on what breaks men versus what breaks a woman, but they're equally damaging, adjacent to each other, equally damaging in the same, right? And so it's just that's unfortunate. I didn't know that he and Assata shared a child, or maybe I forgot. So what are you all working on now, and what are you up to now?
Well, because we live in an era now where people are not necessarily going into prison to get people out. people are not. You do sometimes hear about people escaping, because lots of Black Panthers and freedom fighters escaped prison because it was like freedom at all costs, freedom. And so what we have to do is organize the people to understand that, one, there are political prisoners in this country, because they teach us that this is a land of freedom and democracy. So what are people fighting for freedom for? We're not free, and there is no democracy. Just the fact that this country is still bombing with their dollars, our dollars, I should say, Gaza, and destroying and committing genocide against the Palestinian people. Despite the millions of people who are saying, we don't want that. We don't want war. We want you to stop. And the politicians, these elected officials, are not listening. That lets you know that that's not democracy, right? It lets us know that it's not democracy when your political leadership is just ignoring.
I'm happy you brought that up. I am trying to, we understand that this is more spiritual than it is physical. I would like to know, what is the trance that the world have with Israel, where Israel can do what they want to do? What is it? And it is that they are a type of people, right? They are a type of reptilian, or a type of people that is controlling the masses. And this has been something that has been happening for decades.
Yeah.
And people are not, thank God that the people are starting to wake up, but waking up and being able to do something to stop that is two different things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one, Israel is the creation of the United States, right? In 1948, Israel was created. So they're settlers. It's a settler colonial state that was created and funded by the U.S., right? That when the Jewish people came out of Hitler's Germany, they needed a homeland. And so they didn't want to go to the Dominican Republic, because that was a place that was offered to them. They said no. So they chose Palestine now. And I do want to say that that there were Jewish people living in Palestine. Jewish, Christian, Muslim, living in Palestine prior to 1948 and living in harmony. But the Europeans that were survivors of those camps became Zionists. Just like we have white supremacists here. We have the Proud Boys. We have the KKK. We have the White Citizens Council, right? We have all these people that are white supremacists that do not, like the slave owners. Just like you and I are descendants of enslaved Africans, these people are the descendants of the slave owners and the slave traders and the slave masters. And so you can't legislate a thought. They make laws, but they break the laws. But like what you said, it's spiritual. It's when you start denying the humanity of people, you call people illegal aliens, you call people immigrants, you call people terrorists. Martin Luther King said it in the 1960s that there's no government more terroristic than the United States of America. He said that. But they never talk about the things that Martin Luther King said other than I have a dream. But he said how violent it was, right? The most violent country in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I saw a video, and I pulled it up as you were talking because I couldn't remember the president. I'm always searching YouTube, social media, just period. And I came across, this black and white video of President Truman on how he discussed that he was responsible for creating Israel, right? So that goes in alignment with what you said. Another thing I question is, why is it that the United States seems to be responsible or lowering to Israel? And what I mean by that is the Holocaust happened in Germany. Why is it that they have the mentality that they are entitled to all the wealth and properties and so on in the United States of America?
Right.
When the Holocaust did not happen in this country, and so what are your thoughts on that?
Well, one, I would offer that a Holocaust did happen in this country. It was an indigenous Holocaust when they came here and they slaughtered the native indigenous people and stole the land, committed genocide. Okay. And an African Holocaust existed here with the kidnapping of African people and brought to these shores and terrorized and murdered and starved to death and worked to death and beaten to death on the auction blocks and the plantations across this country. So Jewish people do not own the word Holocaust. There was an African Holocaust, and one of the things that used to piss some of the teachers off when I worked is I had my students saying there was an African Holocaust, there was an indigenous Holocaust. Holocaust, if you look it up, it is about the destruction and the murder of masses of people. Jewish people don't own that, but they have marketed so that people think they own that word, right? And so the other thing is white supremacy. This is an imperialism. We live, the reason why this is called the United States is because of imperialism. Indigenous people, my Cherokee and Shinnecock ancestors, the Lakota people, the Cheyenne people, the Apache people, and millions of others, they didn't call this the United States. They called it Turtle Island.
Turtle Island, right.
So they came here. And when we're in school, they teach us that the 13 colonies that they established was a good thing. They don't talk about the people that was living there, the people who were murdered, who were pushed off the land, right? They don't talk about that. And so it's the same thing. Palestine is Palestine that is now being pushed to be called Israel. But it's Palestine. Right. And so just because what happened to indigenous people on this land happened a couple of 100 years ago doesn't mean it wasn't stolen land.
Right.
It was stolen land. If I steal somebody's bike today, 30 years later, they still going to remember their bike was stolen 30 years ago. So they can reframe it and change it, and that's what they do, right? But it's colonialism, and what it means is the displacement, the physical displacement, and the erasure of a people. I live in Brooklyn. Brooklyn is being gentrified like you would not believe. People are just being pushed out because they don't have to say no black or brown or indigenous people. They just price us out.
Right.
So we can't
and then you have things such as deed theft that's happening. I mean, your mayor is he has opened up an office, to prevent deed theft, thank God, but that has been happening for decades now, right? And it's only happening to indigenous people that have those beautiful brownstones in Brooklyn. Those brownstones are beautiful. And again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about them thinking that they're entitled to the home and to all the wealth in this country. And and they're running amok, and it is out of hand. I'm happy that you said that they don't own the word Holocaust, right? As you broke that down, you are absolutely correct. And some of the things I mentioned with them about disarming people from holding them accountable. You hold them accountable and they say that you're anti-Semitic, but Semitism as a whole is an umbrella, and it encompasses all things Jewish, which is the languages, the different types of Jews. So if you hold one person accountable or a group of people accountable, how are you anti the entire umbrella? And they get away with that. That is something like I am so here to argue that. You cannot, that is not anti-Semitism. That is not anti-anything. It is holding you accountable for your wicked ways and your bad deeds. It is your character that is being talked about. But they were able to accomplish not being held accountable by pointing you're anti-Semitic, and the people let that happen.
It's creating a narrative. It's like the narrative that was created of black people, right? And during enslavement, there was no discussion about black people being lazy and being criminal. But after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed and theoretically abolished chattel slavery, all of a sudden the image that was presented about black males was that they were criminal and they were lazy and they were after white women and they were a danger to white people. And so that image has been marketed through their newspapers, their movies, their TV shows, their music, everything. Just like the image of black girls and black women as the sapphire, as hot to trot, as, promiscuous. Black girls and black women, don't get me wrong, because there were black girls and black women who slayed the slave owners who tried to rape them, right?
Oh, yes. What about the sister who was the seamstress? I am so sorry for interrupting. But what about the one that was the seamstress that put poison in like the thread and things like that? So when she would sew up there, had sisters.
We resisted. That's right.
Those are stories that are not taught. And I'm learning about these stories on social media. Again, social media is what you make it. You have to check off what you're interested in, and whatever it is that you're interested in, this is what's going to come down your feed. And I tell you, I've learned some things from social media that I had yet to hear from school. You understand? So there were many revolutions, right? You did mention in the beginning and then a few minutes ago about your indigenous ancestry and your heritage. Have you taken, and I know you do so much, but have you went through the process of claiming aspects of your land or your tribe? That is something that's what I have on my list. Now, why I'm taking this as an important thing for us to do is that when we claim our land and our ancestry, right, that puts us in a position of better power, right, and takes us out of the fray. And I'm not saying that we need to separate ourselves from everyone, but what we need to do is amass some power other than what we've been doing, because it's out of control, right? Look what they did to the young boy Nolan Wells, and again, you go away with your friends to a lake for the 4th of July weekend and you don't come back, but all your white friends come back. And I'm tired of this being a black and white thing. This is what I do know. This is why I say it's spiritual. They continue to also harvest our energy. They know that these things are wrong. We're talking about teenagers that hear the news just like everyone else heard the news, but you fix to do something else that will create an uproar. And it is always having us in positions of angst and hurt. And what happens is we leak our powerful energy and they just sap it all up. Right?
I'm so glad you said that, because our ancestors, I know your grandmother, because I know my grandmother said, and her grandmother, this far by faith. We have to be spiritual because we are spiritual beings. This is the flesh, but we are spiritual. Right? And so like holding on and tapping into that power is what gives us the strength to be able to resist in all the ways, because everybody's not going to resist in the same way, but there are different ways, like what you said about the sister who sold poison into the thread, people who cooked, and some people like Nat Turner, like people did, Harriet Tubman, people did different things, but it was all spiritually based, that I have a right to freedom. And I have a right to dignity and my human rights. And what you said about the land, Malcolm talked about it. Land is the basis of independence. We can't have independence if we don't have land, right? And that's part of what we lost touch with when all of us, what they call the Great Migration. We left, as Malcolm called it, up south. We left the South for the northern cities thinking that it would be better. And it's what you said. It was just different. It wasn't better. It was just different. The racism and the white supremacy was manifested differently, but it was still there. But in leaving those homes, in things like what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that happened in Wilmington, North Carolina, and Rosewood, they're taking the land. All they do is change it. So today it's called deed theft. But, years ago, 100 years ago, they was burning the town down and chasing people out of the town. The Red Summer of 1919, where they just was murdering black folks. White mob just going through towns, murdering black folks and chasing them out. Now they do it with deed theft. They use their laws. They use their courts. They use their records. Like Asada said, he's been locked by the lawless. These people are lawless.
Right. And like you said, and they amass their power by taking our land, right? And then have tricking, that's called getting tricked out of our spot by having all the black people in this country believe that they were brought here by slavery. Right. There's many black families that have not been enslaved.
That's right.
So if we're not enslaved, where did they come from?
That's right.
And so they've also frightened. So a lot of elders are afraid to talk, right? Because if you claim you're Indian, you claim your tribe, we're going to lock you up, or we're going to do this. So now people are silent. So with the fear and the silence, they're not teaching their history to the youngsters, right? And then there's many people like myself that come from broken homes, right? So I know who my father is, but I don't know all my family on my father's side, right? So there's a lot of that goes on where people don't know all of their family, and we got work to do, right? I firmly say that we have to. Because this can't continue to go on. We cannot continue to be in a situation where we're crying and these types of things are happening to us, and then they make up all the laws. No. And then we cannot continue to say that God is going to come down and things are going to. We have to do it. Right. When we do, like what they say, where a prayer without work is dead, when we start putting in the work in that way,
that's right.
Collectively, we can't have small groups of us. We need all of us to be thinking like that. Right. It doesn't matter how we are resisting, because like you said earlier, everyone is not going to resist in the same way. That's ridiculous. And the way they're attacking us, it is not the same, right? There's food insecurity, there's education insecurity, there's prisons, there's homes, there's the jobs, there's different. We're being attacked from all aspects that makes you that concerns living a good and holistic life. And so we have to understand that and have defenses for all aspects and respect how others are resisting, just because it's different. And you know what? People are listening, and I know. Does anyone have any questions? I apologize, because we can go on. I told Dequi this was going to happen.
Thank you, sister. I appreciate
it. Yes. Greetings. How's everybody?
Okay.
Doing good.
Yeah, I definitely celebrate the feminine energy speaking these things, from their heart and mind and memory, because, we have been through a lot as a people. But here we are today, and this is what I'd like to ask. Okay. Since we are the most religious and spiritual people on the planet, if we could figure out a way to get the people in the churches to get Rev in line, even though he's under contract of 501c3, bind his hands. But if he doesn't speak, just like some of these barrister lawyers, whatever the case may be, they might not tell you the information, but if they know somebody that knows somebody that knows them, they'll tell that person. Because I once went through that, in my much earlier years when I was in my 20s. But overall, going back to what you were speaking on Tulsa, Oklahoma, and these places, a lot of these things took place between the 1700s and the 1800s. This is another reason why they strive to talk from the 1800s on, because remember, they want us to believe that they were fighting the British. They were fighting the indigenous people all along, And let's not forget, the first 5 presidents of the United States were melanated. So, and it's evident and it's proven, but my point is, if we could get some of these people that are in these churches to get on Rev's behind, we can go back to having the meetings that used to take place, in the 1800s, because that's one of the main places that decisions was taking place. That's another reason why the Ashkenazis that created the NAACP had Martin Luther King go to the people in the churches. And that's why he was preaching in the churches, not because he's a minister. Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson are also ministers, you know, because it's just like being a Mason. You know, it's basically like a title at a certain level. But that's what I wanted to ask, you know, has anybody ever thought or considered that about this ministry game?
I haven't, but I would say that that's a great strategy. One thing I will say, and you guys have, if you've been listening to me long enough, you know that when it comes to church now, we're dealing with personality disorders that resemble that of the very same white people we're talking about. You know, this white supremacy and all of these things is really reflections of personality disorders such as psychopaths, malignant narcissists, and people who lack empathy, people who exploit others, people who want power and they get their way at the expense of other people, all of these things. And we have that exists in many of the churches. And it becomes their drug, right? They're addicted to that. So now, what you said is great. We need that, but we first have to deal with the member in positions of power to stop getting high off of exploiting other people. The followers that go to the church, I find that we will have no problem with the followers, right? It is those who are heading up these churches who get high off of exploiting other people and being the figurehead because that makes them feel like they have power.
Right. That's the drug. Greed is a drug. It makes people we liberation theology. What the brother is speaking of. That's what we used to have. Harriet Tubman God spoke to her to tell her, you got to go and free those people. And so now we have people who say that they speak the word of God, but they speak the word of the dollar. We got mega churches that don't serve the people, that serve the pastor who drives around in a Rolls Royce and lives in a mansion and wears expensive suits and shoes, and is not serving the people. What I can say about the movements of the 1960s and 70s, they went into churches and made the people in the community be responsible and responsive to the needs of the people. So I couldn't agree more with what the brother is saying about the churches, because, as I said, my grandmother used to say, it's all by faith. But if young people are watching churches not serving the people and just talking about money, then that's going to turn them off. And so people don't necessarily see the relationship between their everyday lives and the spirit world. We got to get back to that. We got to get back to knowing that we are a people, that we are a nation of people, that we are a community, and that we need each other, and that we support each other and look out for each other. It doesn't mean that things was ever perfect amongst us, because we always had stuff, but we also had love for each other and looking out. And Miss Sarah looked at you and said, now, baby, you know you don't need to be doing that, right? Aren't you so-and-so's child? Now they have taught us to teach our kids to say, mind your business, right? So all of those things that helped us as a people, the faith, the community, the love, the kinship, the responsibility, and what you said, the accountability, we were accountable to each other. This system destroyed that with the war Black liberation movement, with the so-called war on drugs, with the prison system, with the foster care system, and with the infiltration of drugs. Because they always use drugs in order to stop the revolution. They use to get people to not focus, to not be militant. And that's one of the things that COINTELPRO said, to stop the long-term coalition of militant Black youth. So what do we have now? We have entertainment that glorifies capitalism, that promotes capitalism. I have a sister friend whose sister just passed away, and they're looking to bury her. She got to come up with $10,000 in a couple of days, and she was like, people have a problem with socialism. They don't understand that capitalism is wicked, because that
Right.
is a basic thing, that we cannot bury our dead because of capitalism, because it's the business of death.
And I want to say this. I'm happy you brought up hip hop, right? Because we're talking about these people, Zionists, that are everywhere, right? So we have the Jewish people that run the music industries. Rappers has been saying this for years. LL Cool J has said this for years. Matter of fact, he was one of the first rappers to start acting because of them not wanting rappers to rap or write conscious lyrics. And
Yep.
I have a problem with our people, I think, because of slavery and the abuse and how and what they have done. It has taken the fight out of our people because I question, why are you still in hip hop writing and putting out this kind of music, because they're behind the scenes telling you, where I'm not going to push your album, whatever it is that they're saying.
Yeah.
I want to hear sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And you're allowing yourself to do that to still keep the money flowing. But what you're not understanding is not putting up the fight. But like at some point, we are going to have to do this as a people. We make you wealthy. The hip hop is our culture. That's our swag. That's our creativity. If I cannot write conscious music and rap about consciousness as well, you get no music, right? But what they don't understand that's happening is that you go along with that. And I always say there's people like Macklemore, right? He's not a straight up rapper, but he makes good music. When you go on YouTube, his views is in the 400 nearly billion views, and this is a white person. Now, I'm not saying that white people can't make good music. I love all kinds of music, and I have the collection of the 80s with Cyndi Lauper and everything. What I am saying, though, you have enough Macklemores that come out making conscious music. They will allow them to make conscious music, and what's going to happen is that's how they're going to take over hip hop, just like they took over rock and roll and everything else that has been taken away from us. So we also have to get into the thing of saying, no, resisting, like you said earlier, has to look different. It has to be per the respective category that we're in and the respective sector. But we cannot allow these types of things to happen. So we're allowing ourselves to get pushed around. Rappers like Young Thug wearing a dress. Why are you wearing it? You know what I mean? You're allowed because you want the money, and you think that you're staying in the game with the notoriety, but you're a man. Not only that, you're like 6 foot something. You know what I mean? You too tall to act small, right? That's something that the rapper said, and I say that to say because you're so tall that you can't be missed. They're gonna see you. So why are you wearing a dress, right? So
we sell
they're trying. Yeah, and there's and it shows that we're constantly dealing with the Zionists in every aspect. But then they said Kanye was crazy when he held them accountable because right on his first album, didn't he talk about God? Why are you? So they're telling rappers that they don't want them talking about God. You know why? Because the Jews don't mention God. But who are you? You don't mention God because you're a Jew. But why are you telling people who created a thing that they can't use the word God? You're overstepping your boundaries, and those are the things that we're sitting back here and allowing to happen, and as a people, right? And so we have so much work to do, and this is 2026.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions or any statements? And I know it's 8:14. I knew this. Yes, Forrest.
Yeah, I muted myself. And first of all, I'd like to thank Sister Dequi for coming in. Thank you, Sister. I was listening, and as usual, you have a wealth of information. Just to let the rest of the listeners know up here on your show, Sister Arlene, that she is so prominent that I listen to her on Brother McIntosh's show when she pops in every now and then. So her knowledge is well respected. And most of all, her input into the community and what she does. I want to thank you, Sister, for everything that you do, If more sisters were like you, and even the brothers, we would be getting somewhere, like you mentioned, the 70s and 80s, because I told you, I think I shared with you, Dequi, that my father put me in the Mary Baraka's organization at 40. So, yes, there is one big difference between then and now. We are less active and lazy, all right? And I can call it because I've seen it at 69 years young. But also, Sister Dequi, you mentioned something about Cherokee, correct?
About who?
The Cherokee tribe?
Cherokee.
Oh, yeah, my family is Cherokee, yes.
Yeah, just to share with you, we might be related. Because,
Could be.
Yeah, because you know what? My grandmother, my mother's mother, was dark-skinned, and she had her children by a gentleman. My grandfather's name was Richard, and he was Cherokee, okay? And on my father's side, his mother was Ghanaian, which had been my grandmother. So we got a mixture of both. But, yes, so, sis, just want to let you know we share the same tribe, all right? Brother Ed, who came in, he might be mixed in with something. I don't know. He didn't discuss his lineage. But going forward, I would just like to thank you for coming in. And also, please, whatever you do, because we have a speaking spot, Arlene will talk to you about it. August 8th, if you're available, if you have some literature pertaining to what you're doing, especially with Momir, because, I told you we had Gwen DeBrow up here for a minute. Sister Gwen, you're going to get a free table at our event. Okay, I just want to let you know that, sister, there's no charge. You come and do what you got to do. And also, please make a note, sister, on this network, same number, you call in at 12 o'clock. We got Chairman Africa and Sister Patience. They have a show up at the New Black Panther Party. They air at 12 noon, okay? So you might want to listen in. Brother, some good work over here in Newark, New Jersey. All right,
okay.
And, I'll rest on that. Thank you, Arlene.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you for your encouragement.
And as he talks about our event, I have to put up the flyer. As they do, time to pay those dues, pay for those ads. Please see the flyer. I know many people don't have their camera on, but this is the flyer for our Dis-Ease Prevention Health Convention seminar that's happening on August the 8th. This is I think it's the 4th annual event. Will be taking place at the Newark YMCA, like Brother Forrest said. You'll have a table. Come on down and join us. Anyone else have any questions? Before I say that, because it is 8:17, we can go a little bit. We have Brother Bill Graves that is coming on at 8:30 tonight, and then after him is Baba Joe. Right before me was Dr. Bell. She just became a doctor, and her show is called Feeling Nourished. So if you want any information on food and how food actually aids us, you can tune in to just Dr. Bell's show on Thursdays at 6 p.m. Dequi, let us know how we can find you. Let the people know whether your social media pages, what advocacy that you're working on now, or if it's too much information to give, just give your social media. Let the people know.
Well, I have to say, I do have an Instagram. I haven't used it much since Sekou passed, but I do get on it every once in a while. It is that little sign with Kioni Siddiqui, KIONI SADIQI. Yeah, Kioni Siddiqui. It's my last name, and that little sign that goes in front of it.
Okay.
I don't do that much. I know that people do a lot with social media. I'm more like a people person. I like talking to people and connecting with people. So I don't know how else. Well, if they get in touch with you, you can get in touch with me. And I never mind my email or my phone number being sent out, because that's how we build. Community. I just came back from Atlanta because we had a mobilization against genocide against Black, Brown, Indigenous people. We said, in 1852, Frederick Douglass said, "What to the slave does the 4th of July mean?" We say, 100 plus years later, 250 years later, it's the same thing. What does the 4th of July, what does your independence have to do with oppressed people where genocide, a slow genocide? We may not be experiencing the bombs and the drones and the tanks right now, that Gaza is experiencing, but we're experiencing a slow genocide, black maternal death, police terror and murder, inadequate, in health inequities, and the miseducation of our children and undereducation, mass unemployment, all of these things that are homelessness, all of these things that are committing a slow genocide of our people. So we did an event in Atlanta, Georgia, a 2-day weekend of a festival where we had speakers and culture, and then we had workshops the next day, and that was real promising and inspirational. So people can check us out at the spiritofmandela.org is the name of the organization that I am a part of, the coordinating committee. Spiritofmandela.org. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if people want to help or assist in any way in any of your endeavors, that's where they can find information on what you all are up to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Dequi, it has been a pleasure. I may call you back.
Okay.
For another discussion, because we have, you have so much to get, and I thank you for speaking out on the Carmelo Anthony topic, because we're gonna have a long we're going to. I love your spirit. For all of those who tuned in tonight, thank you again, and it's time to be out because Brother Bill Graves is coming up in a few minutes. You all have a wonderful night.
Thank you, sister.